Today, the person sitting in the Oval Office is tasked with managing a highly volatile global economy while simultaneously commanding the most powerful military apparatus in human history. But step back to the late 19th century, and the job description looks entirely different. When the 23rd president, Benjamin Harrison, took office, his primary concerns were domestic, acting as a referee for business competition and managing local labor disputes. This chart illustrates the federal budget over time. During Harrison's presidency, federal peacetime spending crossed $1 billion for the very first time. At the time, that number was considered an astronomical, highly controversial sum. But fast forward to the 21st century, and that once shocking billion-dollar baseline is reduced to a microscopic sliver next to modern, multi-trillion-dollar budgets. The founders never drew up plans for a sprawling, multi-trillion-dollar executive branch. The modern presidency was built piece by piece, forged by a century of escalating global and domestic crises. The expansion began at the turn of the 20th century. William McKinley pushed the nation out of its isolationist shell, waging war against Spain and claiming overseas territories like the Philippines and Guam. Then came Theodore Roosevelt. He brought a chaotic, energetic force to the executive branch, using the power of the office to aggressively break up massive domestic business monopolies. He applied that same executive confidence to the global stage. By asserting U.S. power abroad, Roosevelt engineered massive feats of geopolitical infrastructure, ensuring the completion of the Panama Canal. This aggressive, progressive expansion alienated traditional Republicans. The resulting internal fracture eventually split the party under William Howard Taft, handing the 1912 election to the Democrats. By the end of this era, the Oval Office had permanently shed its role as a passive domestic referee. It was now an active, interventionist force in both American business and global affairs. That global reach was soon tested. Under Woodrow Wilson, repeated international provocations forced the president to deploy American troops into a global conflict for the very first time. There was a brief attempt to pull back. In the years following World War I, presidents like Harding and Coolidge sought to roll back wartime measures and return the government to its minimal pre-war size. That hands-off approach failed dramatically under Herbert Hoover. When the Great Depression hit, the lack of federal intervention left millions standing in breadlines, devastating the American economy. Franklin D. Roosevelt responded with total federal mobilization. He broke the two-term limit, created sweeping economic relief packages, and guided the country through the ultimate crucible of World War II. Harry Truman finalized this era of supreme executive escalation. To force a swift end to the Pacific War, he made the unilateral decision to authorize the deployment of the deadliest weapon in human history. The twin shocks of the Great Depression and World War II permanently locked the president into a dual role: economic savior at home and ultimate protector abroad. There was no going back to the 19th century model. Moving through the mid-20th century, presidents from Eisenhower to Kennedy found themselves trapped in a permanent balancing act. They had to manage the high-stakes nuclear tension of the Cold War while navigating immense social prosperity and upheaval at home. Lyndon B. Johnson struggled under this exact dual burden. He enacted a wide-ranging package of reforms to address racial injustice, even as frustration erupted into violent race riots across American cities. As the absolute power of the office grew, so did the potential for corruption. Richard Nixon became the first president to resign, fleeing impeachment for his role in the Watergate scandal. Following economic struggles under Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan engineered a massive ideological pivot. He used the office to inject free market capitalism at home while simultaneously launching a massive arms race against the Soviet Union. The relative peace and prosperity of the Clinton years was shattered for George W. Bush by the September 11th attacks. This forced the presidency into a sprawling trillion-dollar war on terror. The modern presidency is no longer defined by quiet periods of administrative peace. It operates in a permanent state of crisis management, swinging violently between global conflicts and domestic financial emergencies. By the time Barack Obama became the 44th president, the defining burdens of the office were immense. He was tasked with softening the impact of the 2008 global financial crash, while executing a high-tech shadow war against terrorist networks like ISIS. Compare this to Benjamin Harrison's era. In the 1890s, a localized railway strike was a defining presidential crisis. In 2008, it was a global financial meltdown. The text of the U.S. Constitution regarding the president's job never changed, but the reality is entirely unrecognizable. The American presidency is a living, adapting institution. It is a position of power constructed by crisis, and it will only continue to expand as long